Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to BookTube at War. This is a brand new BookTube event premiering this year. It was thought up by a viewer named DDB, and it was made into an event by Michael K. Vaughan. A whole bunch of other booktubers signed on to read about war in the month of July, to read fiction and nonfiction about war and military matters. Huge amount of variety there, a huge amount to choose from. And it's always been a favorite thing of mine to read because one of my favorite books in the whole world is the Iliad. So all the stepchildren of the Iliad have always been of interest to me. But I've made it more central for the month of July because July is also the month of Camp NaNoWriMo, which is a spin-off of NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, where thousands of people all over the world are encouraged to write something in the month of July. Unlike the official NaNoWriMo, there is no 50,000 word goal. You can set your own goal for word count. And there's also a lot looser parameters on what you're going to write. But I like to stick to the rules of NaNoWriMo for Camp NaNoWriMo. I find that that's more enjoyable. To me, I like the pressure against the daily schedule. I like the discipline that inculcates. And so I thought up a Camp NaNoWriMo project to go with BookTube at War, which is to set a story in the Second Punic War between Rome and Carthage, the famous war that brought us Hannibal and his elephants, among many, many other things. It was a huge war between two relatively equal enemies on a tiny local stage. And it's generated an entire library of literature. It generated an entire library of literature while it was happening and in the 30 years after it ended. Everyone at the time, much like World War II, everyone at the time knew that something incredibly historic and momentous had just taken place. So there were lots and lots of accounts. Unfortunately, we don't have many of them. And the book that I reread last night is on my nightstand. It was under my hand. It was in my consideration for both of those things. For BookTube at War, I would almost certainly have gone back to this book anyway. And for my Camp NaNoWriMo project, a true and authentic account of the Trebia, which is there was a battle at the beginning of the Second Punic War in which the Romans took a mighty drubbing at the hands of Hannibal. And it's been studied. There are a million books on it. I don't have any of them. I used to have 2 or 3 dedicated military studies of this one battle for all that we can reconstruct it, for all that we know of it. But instead, I went to what I consider to be the best modern history of the Second Punic War, which is this. It's J.F. Lazenby's Hannibal's War. I think this is a new edition from the 1990s with an updated preface, maybe an updated bibliography. But Lazenby, in a way, future-proofs what we would now, the tech dudes would call future-proofs this book, by situating so much of it in those ancient sources, which of course don't change and don't multiply. So, military historian snobs, and oh my, does military history bring out the snobs. Oh my. History does, just in general, but nothing does more than military history. And even that can be weaponized further because Napoleonic era military history brings out the worst of the worst of the worst. If you are talking military history with a man over the age of 40 and he starts a sentence with actually, just kill yourself. Just kill yourself right away. Save yourself the trouble. You're certainly going to kill either yourself or him or both if you let him get any further than that word. They will say, well, this thing was written 30 or 40 years ago, so scholarship has moved on from there, but nothing has happened to Livy and Polybius since then, and nothing has happened to them. And a huge amount of this book is just Lazenby interrogating those sources, and also the landscape, the non-written, the non-historical, the non-written indicators of what might have happened and where it might have happened. There's a lot of landscape study, a lot of groundwork is covered here to try and pin down exactly where all these things took place and how, and what the landscape actually looks like. And I don't ever see it when people talk about this book, but I also love the way it's written. There's a Dawn-ish kind of offhand elegance in the prose that I really like. This takes you from the very beginning, gives you a brief but good overview of the grounding of the Second Punic War, and then takes you through everything that we know about the war all the way to the end. It's not a long book, but it's tremendously involving. I want to read you a section here to give you an idea of what it's like. This is a little spoiler for you. Rome wins, and they impose a treaty on Carthage. It's not anything like the treatment that Carthage is going to get in the Third Punic War, but in the Second Punic War they impose a treaty that the terms of which are debated among the leadership of Carthage, many of whom think these terms are extremely severe. The passage goes like this. As was only to be expected, the proposed new terms were harsher than those proposed and accepted in 203, in particular in limiting Carthage's freedom of action. Even if Appian, that's one of the sources, is wrong to say that the new terms forbade her to wage war on any ally of Rome, Polybius's version, that she was forbidden to wage war in Africa without Rome's permission, left her extremely vulnerable to possible aggression by Massinissa, and the clause requiring Carthaginians to be friends and allies of the Romans, recorded by Appian, also puts them in a new position of subservience. In addition, the indemnity was doubled, and the size of the fleet allowed to the defeated city halved. The clause demanding the surrender of her elephants and forbidding the taming of any more was also new, and perhaps owed something to the formidable number Hannibal had been able to bring into the field at Zama. The terms were conveyed to their fellow countrymen by the 30 Carthaginian envoys, and when, at a meeting of the Carthaginian Senate, a member of either the Senate or the Council of 30 attempted to speak in favor of rejecting the terms, Hannibal strode forward and forcibly dragged him from the rostrum. At this there was a murmur of indignation, but Hannibal, while admitting that he might have acted contrary to the normal custom, he had left Carthage at the age of 9, he pointed out, so they must forgive him. He had left Carthage nevertheless strongly maintained that it was only love for his country which made him act this way. It seemed amazing and extraordinary to him, he declared, that there was any Carthaginian alive who did not thank his lucky stars to get such lenient terms when they were at Rome's mercy. Little prescient for what's coming. This speech, coming from such a source, carried the day, and the Senate immediately dispatched envoys to accept the terms. And here he cites Polybius and Livy, the exact passages where they describe this in their separate accounts. Livy says that the senator who tried to oppose accepting the terms was called Gisco, and if this is true, it is a nice thought that this may have been that Gisco who expressed disquiet at the disparity in numbers at Cannae, now determined to show his old general, in totally different and inappropriate circumstances, that he could be as resolute as anyone. You can see in that passage, whether you know anything about the Second Punic War or not, you can see how thoroughly grounded that is in what the actual oldest sources that we have say about what happened. They are trotted out, they are examined in minute detail, and they are compared against each other. They show up in the same lines, in the same paragraph, and there's also conjecture that isn't present in those older sources, but that's all over this book. Lazenby's conjectures are lots of fun in here. This is something that I was going to take up again and study anyway, because my Camp NaNoWriMo story is all about one particular battle of the Second Punic War. I want to know everything there is to know about that. I want to dig in and do some conjecturing of my own. And it's always fun to see what modern-day historians assess, what they make of my main character. Tiberius Sempronius Longus was the Roman general who lost the Trebia. He lost that battle. He didn't die there. And as a result of him being there, of him being the guy in charge for the Roman side, and apparently, at least on paper, having made a lot of big blunders, as a natural result of that, every modern historian wants to take a whack at analyzing him, at figuring out what kind of a person he was like. That's always fascinating to see. I want to read all of that before I promptly disregard all of it in favor of constructing a Tiberius Sempronius Longus of my own. But that's my book for today, my field report, as DT puts it, for BookTube at War is Hannibal's War. I was going to get to this anyway for this because this is one of my favorite Penguin classics. This is all about this is Livy's account in Aubrey de Selincourt's inimitable English of all that took place, of all that Livy, who had a wealth of documents that we would give our eye teeth for. He had those spread out in front of him, and we don't have them anymore. So it's fascinating to read what he's reading from those documents. I'm going to go over all of these things anyway for my story. Fortunately, I'm writing the story, and it's coming wonderfully, but fortunately, I haven't reached any point where I need any of this research. This is going to be, my story for Camp NaNoWriMo was going to be an intensely personal thing. I could make up the battle. This is going to be about a man learning about his place in the flow of time, which, could happen by him examining a chipmunk. but I am going to need all of this stuff, so I wanted to do this as a field report because I loved it all over again. I just loved it all over again. Who knows where we'll move tonight? I may actually be a little bit of a scofflaw for BookTube at War. I may read something, I may report on something every day for the month. BookTube at War is only a month long, so I may do that. You'll be the first to know because I will make the videos. But I'm telling myself anyway, I'm assuring myself that I would not simply be making videos in order to use the epic thumbnail that Michael K. Vaughan made for me. The videos come first, not the thumbnails. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.